On this week's show, the Georgia Southern Eagles open up the Tyson Summers era with a victory, but head on the road for a little more difficult task as they open up Sunbelt play at South Alabama. We'll preview that and have much more as we welcome you inside the Eagles Nest. Welcome inside the Eagles Nest. I'm your host, Josh Aubrey, being joined by Mike Anthony, the Georgia Southern beat writer and sports editor for the Statesboro Herald. And Mike, we saw it. Everybody's talked about it. We'll briefly get your thoughts once again on Georgia Southern's 54-0 kind of ho-hum win over Savannah State. We saw just enough to know that it looks as though they're going to run the ball this year and mix in a few passes when they can. Pretty efficient. Might not have been the prettiest passes, but they got the job done. Showed just enough to get the win, but I think we're going to have to maybe expand that playbook a little bit this week. First of all, your thoughts on Savannah State?
Well, overall, a solid performance by Georgia Southern. I saw about what I expected to see out of them. Nothing's a sure thing in life, but Savannah State about as close as a sure win as the Eagles could get, especially now playing up at the FBS level. They never had trouble as an FCS team. They beat them 86-3 a few years ago, 54-0 this time around. Their first shutout in about 4 years. So a solid performance offensively and defensively, really a more than solid performance defensively. That's what I was most impressed by. Savannah State not only shut out, it wasn't until their final two plays of the game with under a minute left, with the first and second string long since off the field, that's when Savannah State was finally able to go over 100 yards for the entire game. And it's one thing to shut out a team, it's another to barely let them on your half of the field, and another to hold them under 100 yards total.
So plenty to be positive about. You got a lot of the young guys in the games. It's kind of like a rec league game. Hey, we got everybody in, the parents are all happy, everybody's happy. You came out of there fairly injury-free. I know Nardo Govan did get taken off the field. We don't know the extent of his injury, and we won't know because we're not allowed to ask those questions, but that's for a whole other time. As for the upcoming opponent, you have South Alabama going down to their place. They've been kind of the talk of the Sun Belt right now. When you beat an SEC school, that's going to happen. It doesn't matter if you beat Vanderbilt, Kentucky, Mississippi State. You're going to get talked about in South Alabama. Hats off to them on beating an SEC school.
Yeah, it's one thing to play a game against a big team, an SEC school, kind of like Appalachian State did last week, where they came out firing on all cylinders, really pushing them from the get-go, lasting until the final gun and then even longer going into overtime before they lost. That's not exactly how South Alabama did it. For the most part, the first half, the first three quarters of that game went about how Mississippi State had planned it. They got out to a 17-0 lead. They were starting to think about maybe getting some starters out of there, but then South Alabama started swinging back. They claw back into the game. They take the lead late, and Mississippi State, they bounce back. They put themselves in a position to win it, but a wayward kick, not exactly something to cry over. South Alabama actually missed two, so they easily could have been forcing Mississippi State to go for a touchdown there in the last half, but that's just really what stood out to me. Usually when you see those upsets, it's the variety where an underdog just has a great day and plays great all day. Not so much for South Alabama. They took their licks early, then they dug in, fought back, and ultimately won probably the biggest victory in their program history.
All right, well, we had a chance to talk with some of the players and Coach Summers about the task at hand, going down to South Alabama, facing a team that's coming off quite a high, and going down there and hopefully getting a victory.
It was nice overall just to be able to come here and play at Paulson Stadium. That was the most important thing for all of us, and just to be able to experience college football again and what it's like to be on long drives on the field. I think that was important, but like I said, we did some nice things this past weekend, and we have to carry some of that over to this upcoming week against South Al, and some of the mistakes that we made, we have to get that fixed. I think South Al is a really good football team. I always knew that since we've been in this conference. They have a great coaching staff, and they have great players, and they got a huge win for them and some Book Conference last week. So we have to be prepared for that, and I know we got to be on our point when we go play it over there at Mobile.
This week is a big week for us at Georgia Southern. Going to our first conference game, everybody locked in, starting on our game plan and things like that. So we locked in, focused, ready to go.
What do you know about South Alabama? What do you expect?
I expect a lot from them. They just beat a good SEC team, and I know they're going to try to bring it all this year, so we're ready.
They're definitely a good team, and we're definitely going to have to be ready. But I feel like we're going to have great prep. We got a great game plan and preparation. We should be ready to go on Saturday. We're just going to try to just stay focused on the task at hand, not really have a lot of playing around going on because, like I said, we got to take care of a job on Saturday.
Well, I think the big thing that you see again is another team from the Sun Belt have an opportunity to be successful, and I think that similar to what I said on Friday night, our league is a league that's certainly a force and somebody that people understand what we're doing in our league, and Sun Belt is certainly a league that's coming up, and obviously what they were able to do shows what kind of teams we have in our league. I think the South Alabama, obviously a great win the other night for Coach Jones and his football team, and certainly coming from a place where football is important. In Mobile, Alabama, football is very important and got good athletes. We've always been able to see that. Really talented on the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball. But, a tight end that's got a lot of accolades and a tight end that's got a lot of success. Quarterback, I thought, played really well on Saturday. A running back that's got big play potential, and an offensive line that's vastly improved, in my opinion. Defensively, watching them, again, I think that they are really, really good in their back seven, and I think what you see is they've got a bunch of guys that are really playing hard and doing a nice job with their front four. Certainly, they've had a few injuries at that in their defensive line position, but I thought their front four played as hard as anybody could the other day, and I thought they played within themselves, and I thought that their scheme was able to fit what they needed to do to be successful.
Well, Mike, this upcoming game is also another first for head coach Tyson Summers. It's a first for a couple ways. I guess you have the first Sun Belt team that he'll be facing, and you also have the first road game. And you never know how a coaching staff and a new, everything being new, how they're going to react to going on the road, especially a game that they're going to be flying to, which they'll be doing this week when they head to Mobile.
Really is a challenge for any coach at any level. Just looking at some of the local high schools around Bullitt County, coach having to get everything in order, make sure the equipment's packed, account for everybody on the bus going there, account for everybody on the bus coming back. Same thing, except scaled way up when you're not only talking about flights, interstate travel, but also about 100 people in your traveling party. Now, granted, there's some people who can take some of that load off the coach's mind. They can do some of that job for him, but when you're the head coach, you always like to have your finger on the pulse of your team. You want to know what everyone's thinking. So definitely a new experience for him. Maybe a little bit different when you have to sleep in a hotel bed the night before a game instead of your own bed.
Well, the one thing Coach Tyson Summers has kind of mentioned is the fact that he's tried to leave the game day and that kind of atmosphere as far as what the guys are doing. They're trying to transition it the same way they did before with Coach Fritz, so maybe that will help pay off. We had a chance to talk with Tyson Summers about playing their first road game and the other things that come with that situation.
We got a good organization and good order. We spent a lot of time with it, and with what we feel like is going to be best. I know I said it the other night. I really don't want to change a whole lot of what their Saturdays are. The idea is that a Friday here versus a Friday there doesn't change. We're just in a different town, and obviously we do have a little bit of the travel, driving the Pooler, and then trying to get on the plane. But as far as once the meetings start, the meetings are really at the same time each day. Each Friday, whether we're home or away, we get done the same time, whether we're home or away. We have the same snack, same meal, and really the same meeting. So it's just the difference goes from being in a team meeting room to being in a hotel team meeting room. And if we can do that, the more consistency that we've got, the better off we'll be, and that's what we have it planned for right now.
Well, Mike, it's now time to make those bold predictions, kind of get our takes on what we think the final score will be. The odds makers in Vegas have Georgia Southern, believe it or not, as a 12-point favorite. I don't know what it would have been had South Alabama lost to Mississippi State and Georgia Southern would have come down there. Would it have been in the 20s? Who knows? But your thoughts on the upcoming matchup and what you think how things will shake out.
Well, I'm not in the room setting the line, but I would imagine that what Vegas was thinking was that South Alabama, they did look like a team that was primed to be an early season matchup for an SEC school for about a half there. They did fight back, but they're still missing some key guys on the defensive front. Their entire first string of defensive linemen out of commission. That's not good news when you go up against a team like Georgia Southern who can run the ball. South Alabama with one of the best secondaries in the entire Sun Belt, and Georgia Southern, as much as they've stressed throwing the ball as good as they looked throwing the ball against Savannah State, probably good to know that they can lean on a good rushing attack and not force the issue. The Jaguars secondary, not the kind of team you would want to force the issue against through the air. So if Georgia Southern can get on top early, if they can impose their will, I really think that the tune of this season is going to be Georgia Southern getting out in front and then leaning on that defense. My bold prediction is that the Georgia Southern defense, when we rack it all up at the end of the year, they're going to finish with a higher national ranking in yards allowed than the offense will in yards gained. I don't think that's a knock on the offense. They're going to get their yards. They're going to get them on the ground again. I just think that that's how good the Eagle defense is this season. I think they ride that defense to a victory. Georgia Southern gets on top, adds a couple more late to make it look worse than it'll probably be. I like the Eagles 38-13.
All right. Well, again, we're not going to be too far apart. I think that the defense will hold South Alabama in check for the most part. I do think they're going to get a touchdown, but that's only one is what I'm thinking. I think the final score is going to be 31-10, Georgia Southern on top in this matchup. Well, before we go, soccer and volleyball both going on. Give us a little update on how both of those, or I guess 3 squads are doing right now.
Well, soccer, men's and women's, both getting a split since we've last been on the air, each of them picking up a win. For the men, finally get to come home and play in the friendly confines of Eagle Field. They spent the entirety of their 2016 season on the road so far. I know they'll be excited to play in front of some home fans. And then volleyball, they hosted the tournament last week, swept through it, all 4 wins, only dropped 1 set in those 4 matches. They lost a tough one in 5 sets at Winthrop earlier this week, but they get to come right back home for the Spring Hill Suites Invitational, their second tournament of the year. A little bit of a step up in competition. Some ACC, SEC opponents, Wake Forest and South Carolina will both be in town. Definitely won't be 4 easy wins like last week, but still a good chance for this Eagle team to grow, and I think that you're looking at least a split this week.
All right, well, if you're not going on the road with the Eagles to South Alabama, head on over to Hanner and check out some volleyball action.
Also got to mention golf starting up next week.
Believe
the
it
Eagles
or
will be in action for the fall season. They're on the road all throughout the fall, and then we'll have to see what we can do. They go out to Hawaii this year, so I don't know if they want the coverage or...
Jim, a little early Christmas present for Mike and Josh. We'd love to go with the Eagles to Hawaii. Anyway, well, that'll wrap things up for this week. For Mike Anthony, I'm Josh Aubrey. Thanks for joining us. Hope to see you again next week.